base building or plot building or just any type of building, free building is a staple of Roblox, whether it be games like Bloxburg or the old style, like, build a base to fight against zombies or whatever game. Base building is a, really nice feature that can take a game and elevate it to the next level, or it can be a game of itself. So, in this video series, we're going to be making a plot system where a player owns a plot. They're able to toggle like a little build tool. They're able to cycle objects. You can rotate objects around. You can create a grid so things snap to a grid so you can like precisely place furniture and other objects. And the player can obviously like delete stuff. I can delete that table over there, delete that block. And then one of the biggest features is that when you leave the game and then rejoin, the things that you placed will actually persist. So there's data saving of your plot. So you see everything I just placed is actually saved. So this series is going to be a pretty in-depth, pretty long one, but you will learn a lot. You'll learn about C-frames, raycasts, data serialization, good architecture because this is a game. Like, let's be real. Like, this entire plot system is a game of itself where the player owns plots. So you learn how to like structure your game in such a way to make it expandable and easy to work with. So I'm very excited to go through this series, cover all of these topics. This first video will be just on like basic setup, which is kind of tedious, but it shows you the architecture, which is probably the most important part of any game, even though it's often overlooked. So I hope you enjoy that. But make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this video, enjoy this series, and make sure to subscribe because this series will be a long one. So you have to stay tuned and get notified when the next videos come up. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So before we can actually do the flashy stuff of like placing blocks and dealing with your plot like that, you first need a plot. So we're gonna start by doing that. So first of all, we're gonna make a little part. I'm gonna make this. Let's do like 25 by 1 by 25. So we can make it bigger. Let's do 50. So we just have a little part here. Make it concrete. Nothing special. Okay, here's our little base part. I'm gonna rename this to base, and we're going to make it anchored. And then I'm going to use group it. So I'm going to hold on base, click Control G to group it, and this model is going to be called our plot. So the primary part of the plot is the base, and then we need to create a folder inside of our plot called objects. So the way this is going to work is this plot will allow you to place objects, like it could be furniture, it could be like stuff like walls, I guess, just anything basically, objects. They're going to be stored in this objects folder and they're going to be placed on top of the base. And this plot will act kind of like a template for our entire thing, which that should work out nicely. So we're going to take this plot and we're going to shove it into server storage because this will be our little plot template. And now we have to, start scripting that. So let's go into server script service and create a script. And I'm going to call this script the server. It's literally just gonna be server. And for right now, what is this? Goodbye. Um, right now we're just going to get players, the player service from local players equals game get service players. So we're gonna deal with this a little bit later, but for now this is just a placeholder because we're going to create a module script and we're going to call this the plot manager. So we're making a module script now just at the get-go because when I developed this myself, I realized we can't really put everything in the server script. We kind of need to distribute it out, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to go and make a couple of functions just to start out. We do function plot manager dot spawn plot, and it'll take in a player. And actually, in this series, we're going to add type definitions. I've been beating around the bush too long. So this player, we're going to do a colon after that, and then type in capital player. So this is telling our function that it takes a player parameter, and the type of that is player. This colon says, okay, what type is it? It's a player type. So basically, if you don't know much about type Lua or Luau, I guess, this will just at the very least give you more autocomplete because this knows it's a player, so we can type player dot, and it gives us all of the attributes of a player. So it just gives you more autocomplete, I guess. It's very helpful in that regard. It's very helpful in other regards too, but if you don't know much, that's just all you really need to know. So we're going to create a plot. So we're going to say local plot. Well, we need the plot template that we made. So we're going to say local plot template equals game get service server storage dot plot. There you go. So that's our plot template. And we're going to say local plot equals plot template clone. So we're going to clone our plot template, and then we're going to set the plot template.name equal to, we're going to use backticks here, not apostrophes or quotation marks, because we're going to say it's going to be, where did my cursor go? It's going to be, we're going to put a curly bracket. We're going to say player.name. And notice how it highlights it differently. That's because we're using string interpolation here. So we're able to put the string that we want inside of the other string. Very, very, very useful. You have to use a little bit different syntax. This is similar to how JavaScript does it. And this will just rename the plot to, like, my name's BRIC, so it'll be BRIC's plot. Pretty cool. Good for debugging purposes, not good for much else, but might as well do it. Say plot.parent equals workspace dot. Well, we could parent it to workspace, but or I'm going to make a folder in our workspace called plots. So folder. And we're going to name this plots. There we go. So we have a folder called plots. So we're going to say workspace.plots. So we make our plot, we name it, and then we shove it into the world. And then when we make a plot, we want to keep track of it because we're going to need to grab plots for a player and do stuff like that. So we're going to define a list. We're going to say local plots colon, it's going to be a list of models. So this syntax here just means it's a list of models, an array of models. So it's just going to have like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to have models. In this case, we're not going to use like normal array indices. The index of our plot is going to be the player.userid. So plots player.userid is going to be equal to plot. So for every plot and plots, they're going to have a unique ID of the player, and it's going to be set to the actual plot model. So we're able to retrieve it later. And then we want to just return the plot because later down the line we'll have to actually use this plot. And just to flesh out our plot manager, kind of its purpose in life, because it manages the plots. It's like the owner of all the plots. Let's make another function called plot manager dot get plot, which will also take in a player, which is of type player, and then we will return plots player dot user ID. So and both of these, I guess we're gonna do another colon at the end, and we're gonna do colon model because it means it returns a model. So it takes in a player, which is of type player, and returns a model, and then this is like not guaranteed to actually exist. I mean, so I guess it should be model or nil, but whatever, it's fine. Like this is good enough. So yeah, plot manager done, and then we can go back to our server. And the server, it's kind of dumb. We're gonna get the plot manager, but it's not actually gonna do any logic, which is good because it's good to have the one single server script that doesn't really do much and have a bunch of modules where all of the functionality is abstracted. It makes it really easy to read. So we're gonna say local plot manager equals require script.parent.plot manager. I added a space in the name. That is abhorrent. Okay, we're gonna change the name. Never be like me. Don't add spaces in your name. There you go. Plot manager. No spaces. Normal Pascal case. And then we're gonna say players.player added connect a function, which in this case is going to be plot manager dot spawn plot, because the connection sends a player and the plot manager takes a player. So if we play the game, we should get a plot. We do, in fact, get a plot. Excellent. But you'll notice if more than one player joins, the plot is just going to spawn in the same spot. They're going to spawn on top of each other, which is not good. So you could make some algorithm, to like place the plots in different spots. But personally, I find it easier just to make a folder. I'm going to make a folder. Call this folder plot spawns, and then we're going to add a sphere to this. This will be like a little marker part. Oh, part to it. This part I'm going to change it to like a sphere and be like a little transparent, just so it's like a little debug sphere. And we're gonna make the size 111 just so it's nice and contained. Yep, there we go. And then I'm going to just make it a different color and make it neon just because it's debug. Like we don't need it that much. This is all just aesthetic, doesn't matter. The only thing you really need is to turn can collide off, or turn actually all of the can things off, and then make it anchored. And so this will be a like plot spawn. So you can take this. This is one plot spawn, duplicate it. You have another plot spawn, so forth and so on. There you go. So for now, I'm just gonna leave it at like 2, just so it's like easy to test. But we need a way to manage these plot spawns, and for that, we're gonna make another module script because again, it's a new purpose. The new purpose of this script will be to manage the plot spawns, and this will be a spawn pool, so like a plot spawn pool. So we're gonna name this plot spawn pool. There we go. And it'll be responsible for distributing the plot spawns, making sure we know which ones are taken, which ones are available. And it may sound complicated, it's way simpler than you would think. All we got to do is we got to keep a list of available. There we go. Did I spell that right? I did spell that right. Nice. We're going to say available is going to be equal to something, but we first need to get plot spawns, which would be workspace.plot spawns. So we have our plot spawns, and I'm going to say available equals plot spawns get children. There we go. So get children returns a list of parts in this case, which would be all of the available plot spawns. And then we want to say used, local used is going to be a list of base part, and it will be empty because when you start the game, there should be none. All of them should be available. None of them should be used. So in here, we're going to say function plot spawn pool dot get, and we're going to take in a player, which is a player, and then we're going to return the plot spawn. So this is going to be base part. And here we're going to say local plot spawn equals table dot remove available. So one interesting thing about table dot remove is when we call table dot remove with just a table, it just removes like the last element, but it also returns the element. So it gives you a really concise syntax to both remove the thing from the back of the list and give it back to you. So that's why we're setting it equal to plot spawn. And then we're going to say used player.user ID equals plot spawn. So we're basically like borrowing the plot spawn. So when the player joins, they're going to reserve their plot spawn. It's going to remove it from the available list, add it to the used list, but we know it's that player who uses it because we put it using their ID. This is the same strategy we use for the plots list, but we're using this just for the plot spawns. And we're going to return plot spawn here. There you go. And we're also going to say function plot spawn pool dot return, and this will take in a player, and it will return nothing. And what we have to do here is check, first of all, if the plot spawn exists, like if they actually like rented the plot in the first place. You can never be sure. We're gonna be a defensive programmer. We're gonna like check. So we're gonna say if used. Well, I guess we can do this in a guard class style. So let's do that. So if not used player.userid, then return. So basically, if the player never actually rented out a plot spawn, we're gonna just abort. But otherwise, we're gonna do table.insert available, and then we're gonna do used player.userid. So I'll take the base part and return it back to the available list, and then we also need to clear the used list. So we're gonna use.player.id equals nil. So we're basically saying, okay, get rid of you out of used. We're going back to available. Now you could manage this entire system using tags or attributes. I think I did that in my Tycoon series. I don't know, can't really remember. I did it using tags in the past, but this way is just it's like it's literally 23 lines of code, and it's pretty simple. And it should work just fine for our purposes. It's just another flavor. I'm trying this out now because I think it's a little more elegant than using attributes and stuff. But I don't know, pros and cons. So now in our spawn plot, instead of actually just, you know, leaving it here, we can get our we can say, sorry, we can get say plot pivot to. So we're using pivot to because, that's the way to move models these days. I guess I'm kind of out of date. This is the way you move models. And we need to pivot to a spawn that we get. So we obviously need to get our plot spawn pool. So local plot spawn pool at the top is going to be equal to require script.parent.plot spawn pool. There we go. So we need to pivot to our plot spawn pool dot get player. So since the get method also like does all of the, filing away of our, spawn, whatever. All we need to do as a consumer of this is just like get it and shove it into our pivot to and not worry about it because the functionality is handled in a different file. But when we get it, we get a part. So we need to do .cframe to pivot it to that part's cframe. So let us test this out. It should work the exact same. Yippee. We have our part. So if I were to move this, so I think it spawned on this one. So if I were to move this, well, it'll move as well. Or it might pick the other one. No, it did move. Okay, cool. So it did move because like this is our plot spawn now. So cool. So now in your game, you can just plant these around. Make sure, very, very, very important. This plot spawn pool assumes that there will be more of the little dots than there will be players. There has to be more. Otherwise, there will be issues. Players will not get plots. There will be errors. Or players will get plots, but the plots will just spawn in a default location. People will get errors. Please, please, please just make sure you have at least like 4 more plot spawns than you have max players, because sometimes Roblox can like reallocate players and more spawn in. Like, you want to be safe. You want to add more than you need. Just please keep that in mind. So I did make one minor mistake. We should swap the pivot to with the plot.parent because it's more performant to actually change the C-frame before you put it in the workspace, so it doesn't have to like re-render, whatever. Very minor thing. But now we can go to the client. Okay, first of all, we need to create a remote function called, this is a remote event, not a remote function. Remote function, and we're going to name this GetPlot. So I tried to get the entire system to work without the client actually needing to know what plot they were owned by, and it didn't really work out. So just from the get-go, we're gonna have to get the plot from the server, and then we're gonna have to go into start a player, and then starter player scripts, and then we need to create a new local script. I'm just gonna call this client, just a basic name, and inside here we're going to want to just set up some scaffolding to get everything set up. So let's delete the hello world stuff. First, we're going to need to get replicated storage equals game get service, replicated storage. We're going to say local context action service. This game gets service, context action service. And then we're going to need to say get plot equals replicated storage, wait for child. Important, use wait for child. We don't know when it'll actually exist for the client. I'm going to say get plot. Okay, so first of all, we need to we need to have an object. So the way I'm thinking this is whenever the player clicks a button, they'll go into build mode. And the build mode will, create a new object and that like control how the player builds. And then when they unclick the button, then it will, turn off build mode. So we have to create like that object. So I'm going to go into starter player scripts and create a module script. This module script is going to be our client placer. This will be responsible for placing the objects. Pretty straightforward. And the client local script will just handle the life cycle. So say local client placer is a blank thing, or say client placer, yada yada. So this is going to be a traditional object-oriented class. Say client placer underscore underscore index equals client placer. So we're setting the index meta method. Say function client placer dot new. We'll say local self equals set meta table, a blank table, and then client placer, and then we're going to say return self. So this is basically just the bare bones for a object-oriented class, and I have a video on it. Well, I guess I probably formatted a different way back then, but I do have videos on object-oriented programming if you want to check them out. And then we're also going to make another function called client placer destroy, which will just, this is a stub now, but we'll use it later because there is stuff that we'll have to unhook and like clean up once we're done, and we'll have to like destroy it after you press a button again. So you could make all this stuff using GUIs, but for this tutorial, since it's about the placement, not the UI design, we're just going to be using key presses. That's why we have context action service in our local script. So we're going to say local function set placement active, and this will take a name, which we don't need. It'll take a user input state, which we do need, and it'll take in a user input object, which we don't need. That's why I'm using underscores, just to tell you, hey, we don't need it. We don't really care what that is. I'm going to say if state equals enum, or if state is not equal to enum.userinputState.begin, then we're going to return. So if it's any other state than begin, like when you press the key, that's when begin fires. We don't care, because you're going to press the button, you're going to create the placer, you're going to press the button, you're going to destroy the placer. So we're going to say if not placer, then, well, we need to first define a variable up here called placer. So local placer equals nil, and this will be our placer object. So we're going to say if not placer, then we're going to say local plot equals getPlot invoke server, and we don't need to send anything, because all the server needs to know is who's player, or who wants the plot, like the player who sends it, and that's automatically sent. And we're gonna say local placer, or we're gonna say placer equals client placer dot new, but obviously we don't have it required, so we need to go to the top of our script and say local client I can spell placer, client placer equals require script dot parent wait for child client placer. There you go. Not really sure if you need the wait for child, but good to be safe. And then we're going to create our new client placer. We will need to send in the plot. Yeah, let's do that now. So we can send in the plot here, because the client placer will need the plot eventually down the line. Say client placer.new. We're going to plot, which is a model. And then in here, in our set meta table, we can set plot equal to, there you go. Cool. So our client placer is now aware of its plot, and it's all ready to cook. And otherwise, if the client placer does exist, like if it's around now, because you'll be able to go into build mode, go out of build mode like many times during your session. So otherwise, we're gonna just destroy the placer, and that will clean up all of the stuff that we create and give us a fresh start each time you unclick, or each time you press the build button again. And we're also gonna set placer equal to nil, so this line will run down the line. So this function is meant to be hooked into a context action service binded action. That's why we have those specific parameters. So to actually hook it up, we're going to say context action service bind action, and we take a name, which I'm going to say activate placement, and then it doesn't really matter. And then we're going to take a function, which is the one that we made, say set placement active. So this is the function that will take the stuff, and then what do we want to create a touch button? For our purposes, I'm be using computer, so no, it's gonna be false. And then now we need to send in the key code. So for me, I'm just gonna say B. So you're gonna press the B key on your keyboard to activate the client placer stuff. And then before we run this, we want to do, or write the GetPlot hook on the server. So in the server, we're gonna say local. First, we're gonna get replicate storage. Local replicated storage equals game get service replicated storage, and then we're gonna say local get plot equals replicated storage dot get plot. So the reason we're using a remote function here as opposed to a remote event is that the client wants a value and the server will return a value. You could obviously send a remote event to the server and the server could send something back, but that's kind of dumb. Like, you want to get the value, so you're just going to return it. So we're going to say get plot on server invoke. So when the client invokes this, we're going to set on server invoke equal to a function, which is going to be plot manager get plot. Again, get plot takes in a player parameter. This on server invoke takes in a player parameter, so we can just slot it right in there, and it'll just return the plot. So just to verify everything works, we can write inside of our new, we're going to say print self.plot.name, and then just double check that everything's good. Yep. We should be able to play this. And when we get in and we press B, it prints B Ricey's plot. And we press B again, it turns off, and we press B again, and it does it again. So every time we enter build mode, we're going to be creating a new object like this. And again, the reason I know this is because I tried making this in different ways. This is a way that turned best. It abstracts the functionality out of this base script. This base script is only responsible for spawning within. This thing takes the plot, does the rest, handles the rest. We're going to be writing a lot of code in here. So I know this was a little tedious. You don't really know what you were doing because I set up all this architecture ahead of time when I was writing the script for this video. But trust me, you'll understand why everything the way it is as we move on. Just remember, we're making these modular scripts that each have their own specific purpose. They're going to be short, they're going to be concise, and they're going to do what we tell them to do. And most, if not all, actually, we have like one more to even make down the line, but most things are already set up. So in the future videos, we'll actually be able to code the functionality of the block placement. So stay tuned for those. I really hope you enjoyed this video. But with that, I hope you have a nice day and goodbye.